It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, just a little after lunchtime. They were driving on the M1 North on the way to the capital, just after New Road off-ramp, when a single shot rang out and it hit the car from the back and went all the way to the headrest and got into the head of Cluta Murray. He and his son were killed traveling on the highway. They were, of course, working on high-profile matters as liquidators, but they were not the first to be killed for exposing injustice and corruption in South Africa. The other names, Babita Deokaran, Jimmy Mohlala, Mos Phakwe. There are so many others who have been killed in South Africa. But of course, it's not just murder, the fate of whistleblowers. At times, your entire life is upended and turned upside down. So there are calls to have a fund that protects whistleblowers, not only from being killed, but also for their livelihoods so that they can go on speaking truth to power. We're joined now by Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, who is the Minister of Public Service and Administration. A very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for your time.
Good morning to yourself and your good listeners, and thanks for having me.
We're talking, of course, because yet another whistleblower has been mowed down mercilessly by unknown assailants. She was one of the witnesses in the Omotoso rape case, and they tried to kill her before, but she stood firm. But here we are. Pamela Mabini was killed this past Friday in her driveway in her home in KwaZakhele in Gqeberha. How many more of these must we see?
In fact, we don't have, excuse me, we do not have to see more people being killed as a result of coming forth with information. The act of killing whistleblowers, it's what we reject, and it's utterly unacceptable, and we extend our heartfelt condolences to the family, and also overemphasize that the state stands ready to protect whistleblowers. There are systems in place that wants to achieve such.
Does the state stand ready to protect whistleblowers? I've given you a list of names of people who have come with the truth, who have interfered with corruption and malfeasance, particularly in the public sector, but we know this happens in the private sector too. How were they protected?
No, I think there's something here that we need to put straight. To say some people suggest that government is failing to protect whistleblowers, which is not the case from where I sit. Government is doing everything. And when at any given time where there are some gaps in the system, people need to come forth and express those so that government can do everything possible to cover them. As we are currently doing that, we've got a bill that is underway, which also seeks to try and make sure that it identifies gaps in the system and make sure that we do all it takes. But we do not say, therefore, that all government systems are failing just because of those incidences, which are regrettable indeed. And maybe it would be much better if we invite the Department of Justice and Correctional Services and also the police to just give us a better understanding as to how that happened, if indeed those individuals were under the protection, because sometimes people can whistleblower but not put under the system because they don't choose that. So I think that's an area that we need to actually address separately from the overall discussions.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, Minister, is what it must take, because Pamela Mabini, who I was referring to earlier, who was shot on Friday in her driveway, they tried to kill her before in May 2018, and she kept on receiving threatening messages. This was known. She was also a regular attendee at the trial of at least at the Omotoso rape trial, and she continued, for example, boldly, I would say, supporting some of the complainants and witnesses in that case. But her life being under threat wasn't an unknown fact. How do we protect and look after individuals like that is what I'm asking you.
I understand what you are saying. As I said, that I fully sympathize with the family, and that is something that is not welcomed in our country. We're a democratic institution. Every life is protected and is guaranteed under the Bill of Rights. Sorry, but however, then I'm saying that if maybe the Department of Police and the Department of Justice and Correction Services can therefore be invited to just zoom specifically into this matter as to understand exactly what has happened. Because from where I sit as Minister of Public Service is that I'm not sure whether the lady was put on the whistleblower protection, which therefore that could be a different case. But to comment more in the absence of the detail in this regard, I don't think we'll be doing justice to the list.
Let me remind you of another case. It's almost 3 years ago. In September 2022, I spoke to Martha Ngoye, the then suspended head of legal risk and compliance at the passenger rail of South Africa. I understand, of course, this was before your time in the current portfolio. But she explained to me in that interview that she felt government was not doing enough to protect her as a whistleblower after she said she had exposed alleged corruption in a multi-billion rand tender. And she spoke about how that affected her health and her finances. I want you to have a listen, Minister, and I want to know from you if it would be any different today. Have a listen.
My health has taken a turn to, proportions which I could not even fathom. My doctors have even warned me to say, stress kills, something that I know. I mean, I've gone for medicals after medicals because I didn't know what was wrong with me until I was told that it is because you are so stressed. I've had psychological bills that I've had to pay. I've had to balance the issues of seeing psychologists between me and my daughter, because financially I then couldn't afford it and my daughter needed the assistance. I mean, my credit rating has gone out the roof because now my finances are a mess. I can't pay the lawyers. I owe lawyers hundreds of thousands of rands. I mean, really, on things that I did not do.
How do we make sure that we protect whistleblowers? I mean, perhaps, as you say, the police and others might need to get involved in terms of preventing them from being killed, but many of them have their lives completely ruined, certainly financially, as a result of coming forward. What's the plan going from now on?
Yes, you see, this one incident where my sister is narrating her story is regrettable, but also it does not drive us away from what I have said, because what I know is that when there is a person who have blown the history or a witness which needs to be protected, there is a protocol that is involved. The police will assess as to whether or not there is an imminent threat. If there is indeed, then they will try to take those people and put them on safe places, and they're provided with all the support that might be needed in that particular time. So here, hence I'm saying that people who've got records and stats in terms of what has happened in this particular case will be these two departments. Hence I'm asking that maybe they themselves can come, because they can give us light as to if indeed this...
I'm going to come in there, Minister. I mean something entirely different now. I'm talking about the possibility, for example, of awarding a percentage of funds that are recovered when a whistleblower comes forward, and if that matter then is pursued and we're able to get some of that money back to support them so that you prevent the kind of thing you've just heard there.
Yes. During this first inaugural anti-corruption working group, there was a point which was discussed there. If I'm not mistaken, it was brought in by France, where they said that maybe now countries under the G20 should consider actually paying some sort of compensation to the whistleblowers. That is at the initial stage. As I said, that this was the first meeting of the G20, which will be followed by a number of them, culminating in the ministers' meeting and also the presidents of different states. So that is a point that has been raised, of which we are actually listening to it as a government. All that we are saying is that government of South Africa, as part of the G20, if that is the view that all member states agree to say there must be a level of compensation or reward that is given to to whistleblowers. We cannot say, no, that cannot be. We are not opposed to that, but we must all understand that this is a group of 20 countries. Each country, therefore, if there is an agreement or a consensus, will have to go back to its country and see how best they can actually put that into their own system to make sure that we fulfill it best, because it will be now a mandate that is emanating from the G20 discussion.
Yeah.
So South
Minister,
Africa is part.
here's my difficulty. Many people will feel that expressions of sympathy when a whistleblower is killed are going to ring a little hollow when in fact we don't support them whilst they are alive, to remember them only when they are dead and to mourn them when they're dead, when we didn't actively protect them and help them when they were alive. That's going to ring a little hollow. We've had people like Athol Williams, for example, who was a whistleblower in the Bain case, have to live overseas, supported by NPOs and other funders overseas. Why not champion a fund like that here in South Africa, outside of G20 considerations, but specifically because we are serious about corruption in this country? Why not champion a fund like that that will look after whistleblowers and will make sure their lives are not upended when they come and speak the truth?
That's a discussion that we are having now, which you've introduced yourself to say there is a talk that seeks to do just that. But you must also remember that, you see, sometimes we not that we are running away from whatever discussion that is there, but we sense a view that says so much that our country is doing is never giving due what you call a recognition. Yes, we understand that governments do as much as possible. There should be no gaps in between. But South Africa has a witness protection program in place for over 24 years. And this is regarded as one of the best in the world. So I believe that what we've got may not necessarily be enough, hence the improvements that are made, hence the bill that is coming this year, which seeks to put all those gaps that may be identified. Right. And we encourage people, because now it's in the public domain for people to make comments, that whoever has an interest should throw their views there as to how best we can improve on protecting our whistleblowers. But that does not mean that there's nothing in place. We don't have systems in place. We do. You can have people on the other side talking positively about how they've received the same programs and how these programs has assisted them. But that does not mean there is no room for improvement. We shall forever improve, because as government, we take whistleblowers as key in our endeavor to deal with corruption, as it has been becoming one of our priorities to say we must strengthen their protection, and we must make sure that when we recover assets that have been actually acquired illegally, they can be brought back and be invested in the economy. If then the discussion drives to a
Minister,
point to say,
we're going to have to leave it there. I appreciate it. We've run out of time. Minister Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, who is the Minister of Public Service and Administration. I'm curious to know, having heard what he has to say, would you be a whistleblower? Would you come forward? Would you trust that the system would look after you? Let's talk.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.